Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of League Chat with the Stat. Thank you for joining me once again on another cracker week of a new episode covering all things round 12. Guys, do need you to bear with me once again this week. Unfortunately, I've come down with another case of the flu, so I've got a little bit sick, so my voice is a little bit how's it going. But nonetheless, we continue to pull through to bring you the best content week in, week out. So it's good to be back for another week to be able, as I said, just to discuss everything. A big week this week again with Origin. The lineups being announced, which is exciting for Game 1 next week in Townsville, and all the talking points from round 12. A lot of news to get through as well, and just with the 4 games this week, just being able to bring you all the latest for those 8 teams playing this week. So let's get right into it. First things first, as we usually do, we'll be discussing the NRL ladder. Look, again, can't start the ladder without starting off with the Penrith Panthers, undefeated still on 24 points. Second is Storm on 20, that 4-point buffer still there. With the Eels losing on the weekend, they still keep them at third, but tying with Rabbitohs now at the top of the top 4 on 18 points. Roosters 5th on 16. Seagulls, Cowboys have finally jumped into the top 8 on 12, and the Dragons sit there on 10th. With an 8th with 10 points. Joining them with 10 points is the Warriors, Titans, and the Knights. The Sharks, Tigers, and the Raiders sit now on 8 points. Now, the Raiders going down to 14th is a huge concern. The Broncos, 15th on 6th, and the mighty Kennedy Banks and Bulldogs sitting there on 2 points. Look, everything going down straight into round 12. Now, Storm 40 defeating the Broncos 12. Look, another convincing win for Melbourne. I think if you just play anyone anywhere, they're still very dangerous. And it goes to show, Cooper John's come in last minute in the halves with Chris Lewis moving back to the forwards. Proved the master stroke. Nico Hines is just terrorising all the teams at the moment. And he's just putting on a clinic at the moment. He's just killing it. I feel like it's a kind of, like I always talk about with, Penrith, with Melbourne and with Roosters, that this next man up mentality is really working for him. Anyone they can just bring in at any point will just come in and kill it, which is always a credit to the coaching staff there at those sides. But look, for the Broncos, they were disgusting. This is the second week, the second time in as many weeks where they get a win, and then the next week they can't back it up and they'll get smashed. They can't string 2 performances together to save their lives. And unfortunately, missing Matt Lodge, there was a bit of experience there, and then not having Tyson Gamble kind of controlling things in the halves with Albert Kelly was obviously a bit of a loss. But it brings me back to the point of Anthony Milford. And we talk about how much he's struggling week in, week out, but this was the worst game I've ever seen him play. And I can pretty much guarantee that if Milford was getting a lot less money, I reckon there'd be a lot less pressure. The thought that I have is I feel like Milford wants to show, and he feels like he needs to prove that, by bringing up performances the way he does, for $1 million a year isn't going to work. He's been putting up performances where he thinks I have to play worth my $1 million value, week in, week out. But he's been doing that for the last couple of years. But just it was on another level of how poor he was on Friday night. And I think if he does get a change of clubs, I think he'll be a lot better for that in the long run. And look, another disastrous thing there was no Brisbane forward for over 100 metres. Taking out Payne Haas, waiting for 92 metres, but going out early with a PCL injury. You got to understand that with the Brisbane forwards, and obviously, like in any game, you've got to dominate with a solid forward pack. You've got to be dominating, getting that field position for your backs to be able to do the work and for your halves to create what they can do in attack. But unfortunately, it wasn't to show. And Melbourne just ran right over them, split them so many times through the middle. From Brandon Smith in the opening 15 minutes where he scored that try, it was just, from there, it was just the start of decline for the Broncos. And without that experience, they're going to be suffering that. But Walters needs to find a way to bring that out of them week in, week out, and to be able to string good performances consistently. My standout too, Kami Kamika, 12 runs, 126 metres, a try, 19 tackles. Big performance from him coming into the starting side. And Nico Hines, as I said, that's why he's got like 6-7 clubs after him. He's just a freak of nature. Comes in and he's absolutely killing it. So when you feel like all these players that are missing from Melbourne, looks like they haven't missed a step at all. So it's great to see. Cowboys 29 defeated the Warriors 28. Now, Cowboys started to play really well in that first half. Got out to a really nice lead. Started to build some nice pressure. I thought Jay Clifford played his best game of the year. Unfortunate for him to be his last one before heading to Newcastle. What really helped their case was a sin bidding to Jess Tavaga, which I don't think is a sin bin. But then again, these are the new crackdown rules that the NRL have brought in, and so everyone's just unfortunately having to just go along with it. the Warriors came back and played decent in the second half. They really turned that up. They didn't allow the Cowboys to obviously dominate that first 15-minute period of the second half. But the unfortunate thing from that was they got out to a 28-22 lead, and then in the last 4 minutes they dropped it. Scott Drinkwater found them short on the right hand side, which allowed Hamilton Tabuai to just destroy it and kill it. And that field goal from Valentine Holmes, man, that was beautiful to watch. I reckon when he was probably at the NFL, he probably got punting lessons there. So would have used a thing or two to learn that. But look, he played really well, and he's starting to really find his feet. The Cowboys being at fullback. Now, for me, Colin Hess, 13 runs, 136 metres, a tackle break, 3 offloads, and 24 tackles. Now, not the greatest of performances, but Colin Hess really, for the last 2-3 weeks, has really started to put in some nice performances. Having moved to prop has really kind of helped his game. He started off very slow, and he earned him a spot on the Origin side. So he was my standout for me in that game. And look, I was actually surprised with how the score got out to 29-28, and Warriors being able to put on 28 points with no Warriors forward scoring over 100 metres, just like the Broncos. So a little interesting point there. But look, Cowboys did enough to hold on, get the win at home, and Townsville will be another great place to be able to watch Origin next week, which we'll get into a little bit later. Tigers 34 defeated the Dragons 18. The Tigers, look, I think they played well enough just to take out this encounter. They still had a high error count, 13 errors to 12, and they missed 28 tackles to 27. So there's still a lot of work that needs to get done. But the main difference between the two sides was that they'll be able to split the defense wide open. They made 6 line breaks to the Dragons too, and that really costed the Dragons. They just had a lot of defensive lapses, not enough communication. A lot of the team, not so much, but still a bit of the team missing. Without Duffy at fullback, he really helps them control that defensive line a lot better than what Cody Ramsey was doing. I thought Cody Ramsey was really average, and unfortunately, I don't see him as a permanent fullback, even though Dragons seem to have other ideas. But look, the Tigers, they did enough to just hold on and to get that win. When Tigers have the ball and they're on, and they're really threatening, and they showed glimpses of how threatening they can really be. Had the amount about 34 points to 6 before Dragons put on 2 late tries. But look, some of the Tigers big men are really stepping up. Alex Twal, 19 runs, 193 metres, 5 tackle breaks, 18 tackles, which I thought was a really good effort. Luciano Leilua as well, a big Lucci, 15 runs, 165 metres, a line break assist, 2 offloads, and 32 tackles. Both of these men have been putting in some big performances over the last couple of weeks, which has been really helping the Tigers in their go forward. And we can continue to expect some big performances from these guys for the longer that they're on the field. They really bring that experience and that drive to the side, which allows the rest of the players to just be able to complete their attack, when they're at the front of the line, and just be able to break through those defensive lapses that Dragons had over the weekend. Panthers 30 defeating the Bulldogs 4. Look, another win for the Panthers. I was kind of expecting a quicker score, like I mentioned last week in my podcast with Antoine. Kind of expecting a massive blowout. Fortunately, in this case, Dogs actually played defense for about 60 minutes, which was a bit of a surprise. But with the Panthers here, they really, once they got that try with 20 minutes to go, they just took off. And there was really no stopping them. That last try that involved Burden with the break, he handed off to To'o, and then gave it to Crichton at the end. Fantastic. It's a really entertaining style of footy that, the Bulldogs many years ago used to play, which is really good to see. Panthers, again, notch another win, especially doing it at home in front of a sellout crowd. Was really good. The Dogs, look, they showed heart, but it's not about heart anymore. I mean, if you can defend well for 60 minutes, but if you can't attack, what's the point? That's really what's separating these two sides. The ability for the Panthers to be able to attack and defend is really good. I reckon Panthers will be blowing up at that try that was conceded in the last minute for Aaron Schropp, who got his debut try in his second NRL game. Obviously they'll be disappointed about that. But look, they were a man down. Moses Leota got sent to the bin for that incident. But look, the Dogs, we just find new ways again just to dip. And unfortunately, we're going to expect that for the rest of the year with the Bulldogs. There isn't going to be much improvement in the side if there's going to be the same players being named week in, week out. James Fisher-Harris, again, another standout. 16 runs, 182 metres, 3 tackle breaks, and offloaded 37 tackles. But look, you look at performances from Steve Crichton, who ran for 315 metres. Brian To'o, who ran for another 297 metres. Really, these are the ones that are really gaining those metres and really just, when they're in their trench in their line, they just be able to go out and gain 20, 30, 40 meters and help the Panthers, start getting ready for attack. And they just seem to do it from their backs. Their backs were really putting in some big efforts. They're all running over 150 meters almost every week. So it's really good to see that from them. The Rabbitohs 38 defeating the Eels 20. Look, a much better performance from the Rabbitohs. They just lamented Parramatta's weakness on that right-hand side of the field, and they just smashed it all night. Hat tricks to Dan Gagai and Alex Johnston, especially good for Gagai, who's about to head into Origin camp as well, taking a bit of extra form in today, which is good. Now, Eagles have suffered back-to-back losses for the first time this year, and it's starting to become a bit of a concern with their defence. That right-hand side is shocking. That they switched out Wonga Blake from that side and they put in Tom Obichich, but there'll still be a problem there. Ferguson got found out almost every time. And all Rabbitohs had to do was do that exact same play over and over, and it worked for 4 or 5 of the 7 tries that they were scored. The Eels need to really address that right-hand side. Brad Arthur needs to start making some big calls on dropping Wonga Blake, who's obviously been diabolical since his return from that calf injury. In that case, probably Tom Obichich, but unfortunately they did drop Blake Ferguson for this week, which we'll get to also a bit later. Bit tough considering he was the one left out alone a lot of the time. But just have to wait and see why Brad Arthur dropped Blake Ferguson and to see what changes he's looking to make from there. But yeah, look, going back-to-back losses, very unusual to see Pale do that, especially around this time of year. But this is where they really need to kind of keep it together and just keep the ball rolling and go back to basics and just start winning those football games again. Roosters 44 defeating the Raiders 16. Now, with this game, I was really surprised at just how well the Roosters played. Again, like I discussed, that next man up mentality really works for the Chooks. Joseph Wiley came in for the Senators for Monday to come in at 5'8", and he was phenomenal. Really, really good and scored those 2 tries. Really did his best to help Lamb guide his side around the park. But for the Raiders, they start strong and they just lose their way. Again, they've got so many distractions off the field that they can't seem to just focus on a performance week in, week out. When you think about it, any team that loses to the Roosters in its current state is what I call extremely embarrassing. And the reason I mention that is now they've got 10 of their starting 17 who are out and who have been out for a lot of their games. So right now they've got Lindsay Collins who's out, Brett Morris. They've got, they lost on the weekend. They had Drew Hutchinson go down a few weeks ago. They lost, as I said, Brett Morris I mentioned earlier. They're losing so many players. Clyden suspended. Cordner hasn't played in 3 months. Jake Friend had to retire. Sam Verrills has been gone as well. So they've lost so many players, and these kids that just keep coming through, just keep putting in good performances. Joseph Sawali coming in, played exceptional on the weekend, which was really good to see. But it's from their seniors that they really just seem to lead. Jody Hargraves, 25 runs, 234 metres, 81 post contact, the offload and 34 tackles. And that was an 80-minute performance, which I haven't seen from JWH in an extremely long time. CSC Watakiaho, 50 minutes, 18 runs, 201 metres, a line break, 4 tackle breaks, and 20 tackles. So once Roosters started to realise just how poor the Raiders were, they just started smashing them. And they started doing really well, and they got on top of their game straight away. They started a bit slow. Obviously, Raiders getting out to a 16-10 lead, and then after that, it was just never a good night to the Raiders because Roosters just took them out and just put on an absolute clinic. For the Raiders, I thought Corey Haruanara played his best game. 13 runs, 146 metres with a line break, 9 tackle breaks, 12 floats and 42 tackles in another spirited 80-minute performance. For the last couple of weeks, he's been putting on some really good performances for the club. Unfortunately, it's the players around him that need to step up, and that hasn't really happened as of yet. Sharks 38 defeated the Titans 12. This was the best win of the year for the Cronulla Sharks. Really good win from them. I thought the combination of Moreland and Johnson worked really well together. I just don't understand how they put a team like the Titans away so easily. The Titans have really struggled for the last 5 weeks. It seemed like they couldn't really keep up with the speed of the game, and it really showed. They obviously had a few sin binnings as well, which didn't go to plan, which one I want to kind of discuss right now. With the NRL bringing in so many rules, they seem to forget rules that they had in place from a couple of years ago that are still in place today. So I remember a couple of years ago where there was a common thing happening where if the attacking team made a line break and the guy at hooker came and passed the ball to a player that was offside, that player would usually go for 10. They brought in a new rule where if the attacking team are attacking and they pass the ball straight to a defending team who's just running back to their line, the penalty is going to go against the attacking team and the ball will be given to the defending team. What's happened here is Sharks have gone and made a break. Wade Graham has noticed that Fogarty's still running to the defensive line. Throws a forward pass. Now I need to mention it. Throws a forward pass straight into Jamal Fogarty. For what reason? For no reason. To get that penalty. Unfortunately, because there's so many rules that the refs are trying to realise and trying to work on, especially with the high tackle crackdown, they blow the penalty to the Sharks. They give Sharks a penalty. Fogarty goes to argue it. Fogarty gets sent for 10 for professional foul. It's a garbage call. Rubbish call. That shouldn't have had to be the case. The fact that the ref had to actually sin bin Fogarty is a disgraceful call. Purely for the fact that the rule is if you pass the ball, if you're attacking, you pass the ball into a defending player who's running past, who's had no involvement in the play, the penalty is meant to go against you. Unfortunately, they know I've placed so many different rules and applied so much pressure onto the refs that they just seem to buckle. And calls like that and biddings like that shouldn't have been called, which, again, very, very, very bad. Moriaki Fodawaker was a real standout for me in this clash. 18 runs, 223 metres, a line break, 3 tackle breaks, and offloaded 41 tackles. And he's someone I've been talking about for the last year and a half, 2 years. And someone who I believe is a real smoky and could really cause some damage come Origin time, which I'm looking forward to seeing him do next week. Last game of the round, Knights at 18, defeating the Seagulls 10. Look, a much more spirited performance from the Knights. Started off really slow. Knights, Seagulls getting out to a 10-0 lead. To then have them winning 12-10 at half time and to have to grind out that last 40 minutes was really tough. It was a big credit to them. Now, obviously, they had a lot of calls go their way. They mainly did a cop a penalty till 2 minutes till the game ended, which was really crap refereeing again. But for the Seagulls, though, I thought Josh Shooter being a late withdrawal from the side with a hamstring injury didn't help their case whatsoever. With that being said, having their makeshift 5'8" Tavita Funa come in, didn't have a really good game either. I thought it was really sloppy, had a couple of high tackles, and many just really seemed to lose their way. I thought Tom Jaworowicz, having played 80 minutes, was really quiet as well. But it's a time where Seagulls can, go into the bye week and just kind of just take that bit of a break, get rejuvenated, and then come back out next week and just start going back to basics and finding what really works for them. But look, you got to give credit to the Knights. They did play really well. But another ref call here that really frustrated me was when Tapau put on a hit on Saifidi. Now, in that tackle, Tapau actually bounced off the tackle, so he actually wasn't affected in the play whatsoever. But the problem here was the play had been done and dusted and gone. Then they go to the other side of the field where Knights had the ball. The ref called it all the way back 80 metres to then sin bin Tapau for 10. If you miss it in the game, that's your problem. You don't go back. And again, causing a lot of confusion with all the teams, that they have to go call back on a play where, oh, by the way, mate, for that play 2 sets ago, you're on report and you're off for 10. That's rubbish. This is why I've been against this whole crackdown, because it takes time to implement something like this into a game where players need to adapt and the refs need to adapt as well. It's going to be a while before Vendies realises that he didn't necessarily make a mistake, but he obviously needed a lot more time to enforce something like this for it to have a positive impact on the game. Unfortunately, it's having more negative impact than it is positive. So, well, look, as I said, you got to give credit to the Knights where it's due. They did play well, and they did well enough to hold on to get that win, especially at home, and nab those important 2 points. Now, Clemmer, as I said, was a standout for me. 20 runs, 204 metres, 3 tackle breaks, offload, and 23 tackles. And I thought he played one of his better games. A bit more like that from Clemmer. Can see him back potentially in the Origin frame. But that's something that we're yet to see. And we may not potentially see him again, which is going to be pretty sad for New South Wales. Speaking of State of Origin, both teams were named over the course of the week. Going over to the Maroons, I thought they named a really good side. From their backs through to their forwards, I thought it was really good. They're obviously missing Lindsay Collins and Josh Papali'i. Papali'i due to suspension, but Lindsay Collins I thought was a big loss. Was playing really well prior to his knee injury. Having Tino Fasu and Malawi at prop and Christian Walsh will lay a very good foundation, for Harry Grant. Felice Kafusi will be challenging his tripping charge in the judiciary. So if he doesn't come in, it's a huge loss. Just the experience he brings into the team. But I think it's a very good forward pack and their bench. AJ Boomson, Jaden Sawa, Moriaki Fodawaker, An interesting one here, Joe, off Hingawi. He's played well the last couple of weeks. Don't think he warranted an orange jersey. And I thought the three men, the reserves, definitely deserve their spot. Cole Felt, Red Marnie, and Cole Ness been playing really well. A lot of injury clouds surrounding Ponga, Munster, and Grant. From what I understand, Red Marnie's been released back to Parramatta, which he can attain to his Parramatta duties, which is good. Cameron Munster is playing off that he's seriously injured, but I think he'll play. And Ponga looks like he'll play as well, which will allow Brimson, who's also under an injury cloud, that will also play as well, and he'll be taking that 14 jumper. Now, the Blues, I thought they named a really good side. I'd obviously make a couple changes, but I thought the backline's really good. Tedesco at fullback with To'o and Adakar on the wings, and the Troll getting his spot back in the centres. I think the last time that him and Adakar played together was absolute dynamite, so I'm looking forward to for that combination to continue to grow. I like the fact that Lowell was named at 6. The reason I like that is because obviously you've got to keep that Penrith combination, but I do like the fact that you've got someone like Jack Wyden who's playing utility, who can cover fullback, centre, 5'8", lock. He's got more versatility than what Jerome Luai does. And I think with the Penrith combinations, the way they're going at the moment is just flawless. So it would be crazy for them to not have actually included him in the halves. Forward pack is, for all the injuries and suspensions we have, it's not too bad. Daniel Saifidi has been playing really well. Cook in that game against Para played really well as well, so got to hold on that 9 jumper. Jake Jabojevic at 10. It's an interesting one. Why I like it is because he's been playing some exceptional football, and it's very hard to leave him and Isaiah Yeo out of the side. Isaiah Yeo grabbing the number 13 jumper. But I do like, Cameron Murray at second row. And Tarek Sims, again, played a really good game against the Tigers on the weekend. But I think he's there to bring that aggression. We've got so many players missing, as it is. Corder's not playing. Victor Radley's not playing. We've had some injuries, even to our backs, even in the halves. But the bench, I don't mind. Jack White, as I said, I mentioned earlier, isn't a bad acquisition to be a utility player. Junior Paulo, I've got no problem with that. Payne Haas off the bench would be really good. And Liam Martin, I don't mind Liam Martin. He's been playing well for the last year and a half. I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't go down the route of Nathan Brown, who I think has been playing phenomenal football all year for the Parramatta Eels. I thought it was a bit hard done by. Considering we need to bring that aggression. If I had to pick, I'd probably put Nathan Brown in over Liam Martin. But they're probably the only change I'd be really making in that side. So, look, with the game being announced that it's going to be at Townsville next week, it should be an exciting contest, and we'll definitely be building it up prior to Origin 1. Going to news around the NRL world, Cowboys re-signed Javid Bowen to the end of next year. Willis Meehan, who's now a boxer, played in the NRL a few years ago, has rumoured to be signed with the Bulldogs for the Commander of the Year, which is an interesting one. Hasn't played the game in a couple of years, so it'll be really interesting to see how he comes back. The big news from the last week has been the return of Jack DeBellin. Obviously, the Director of Public Prosecution has actually announced that they would not go to a third trial for his case. So he actually played New South Wales Cup on the weekend and punched out a solid 45 minutes, played really well. So he's now been taken. So now what's going to happen is he's now been put through to the NRL squad, and he'll be playing this weekend, which is exciting to see. DeBellin obviously not played the game for 2.5 years. NRL will be registering his contract as well. Should be done by prior to Thursday night or Friday night when the game kicks off. So it's good to see someone like him back in the game. The Seagulls have re-signed 12 for 4 simply for the next 3 years through to the end of 2024. The Panthers have re-signed Thomas Jenkins, a young outside utility back, for the next 2 years. Sharks have announced the retention of Will Kennedy for 2 years and Toby Rudolph for 3 years. The Eels announced that Mitch Moses has re-signed for 4 years and Madison has taken up his play option for 2022. The Broncos went on a bit of a rampage in signings on Friday. Announced the re-signing of TC Rabadi, Sulan Cobbo and David Mead for 3 years, 2 years and 1 year. And also announced the signing of Branko Lee on a 2-year deal through to the end of the 2023 season. It's been made official that Tigers have signed Oliver Gildart, the centre over in England, for the next 2 years. Over the weekend, Jake Clifford scored an immediate release to head to Newcastle, with Tom Dearden getting an immediate release to head to the Cowboys. The big rumour of the week was Dylan with Tenny Zesniak. They'll be discussing a move to the Tigers potentially as soon as possible on a 2-year deal. He's come out and denied it, so we're just waiting to see what's going to happen with that deal. Dylan Walker's been suspended for 1 game and fined $10,000 for assaulting a painter worker last year. Surprised that he got off with a bit of a slap of the wrist, considering he's been, involved in a lot of controversies off the field. So it's pretty interesting there. Brett Kamali has joined the Tigers Pathway Program in ability to help their side. Now the Sharks are favourites to sign Dale Finucane. Looks like Dale Finucane and Nico Hines have met with Craig Fitzgibbon over the weekend to be advancing in some interesting talks there. The Tigers have re-signed Jacob Little for the next 2 years, which is exciting for them to keep some of their crop. News has just come in now. Felice Kafusi has been announced as free to play inside of Origin. He's been found not guilty of that trip, which is good news for the Maroons. As I said, he brings that experience and that and just that calmness around that side. And he plays about 80 minutes every week as well. So he's breaking news here. Felice Kafusi is free to play after being found not guilty at the judiciary, which is exciting to see. Now, wanting to discuss the 4 games coming up this week. Now, the Dragons take on the Brisbane Broncos. Now, Matt Duffy makes his return back into fullback, pushing Cody Ramsey to the wing, and Michaeli Avarawa comes back to the wing. Ravalawa comes back onto the wing, which sees Jordan Pereira drop out of the 17. Brady Williami will then move into the centres. Jack Bird goes into the second row, and Billy Burns is on the extended bench. Now, for the Broncos, they've got 2 outs of the side. Now, Xavier Coates obviously made Origin, so Sugan Cobbo will make his debut on the wing, and Tom Flegler has been moved from lock to the front row to cover Payne Haas. Now, Tyson Gamble returns into the halves, pushing Aaron Kelly back to 5'8". Gamble going at halfback, and Milford has been dropped once again. And Alex Gamble will turn to the side in jersey 12, with Kenan Palacia to the bench and now Copley dropping to the reserves. Now, in this game, it does make sense and also I forgot to mention Jack DeBella named on the bench as well to take his spot in the side. I like to think Dragons will win, but this game will be very interesting. I think Dragons will win. They're overdue. And I think Broncos, missing Payne Haas is a huge loss for them. And it's going to be interesting to see how Broncos go without, his leadership from the front. So I want to go Dragons by 4 in this game. Tigers coming up against the Panthers. Alex Seyfarth has been moved to the starting side to replace Jarrell Pengawi, who's in the Maroon side. And Stefano Otoa-Kamani will come onto the bench for the first time in about 4 or 5 weeks. Now, for the Panthers, a lot of changes here, with about 7 players moving into Origin. So Dylan Edwards will come back at fullback, allowing Stephen Crichton to shift back to the centres, and Matt Burton moving to 5'8" to take the spot of Jerome Luai. Robert Jennings will come back on the wing, and Tyrone May will be the halfback, with Mitch Kenny being the new hooker on the side. Apasai Coruscant is named the 18th man, and it doesn't look like he's been released at this stage. So he'll be looking around to hang around camp with Mitch Kenny coming in at hooker. Isaiah Yeo and Liam Maida, as I said, are at Origin. So Scott Sorensen and Matt Eisenhuth will come into the starting side. And on the bench is Jamin Salmon from Parramatta, Jermaine Hopgood, and 2 debutants in Lindsay Smith and Isaac Targo. So from what I've understood for the Panthers, that they've prior to the game on the weekend, they had been undefeated all year. So I still like to think that Panthers could still have a big chance of winning this game. And another change is there that Spencer Linu is taking the spot of Moses Leota, who's suspended for 1 week. Look, obviously, you'd like to think I'd go Tigers, but I'm actually going to go Panthers this game. The Panthers by 8. I think with the juniors stepping up, it's still a very good side on paper. A bit of inexperience on the bench, but I think that the Panthers will continue their run and continue that dominance, even without their 7 players. And I reckon they can put it on the Tigers, and I reckon it'll be Panthers by 8. Storm come up against the Titans. A lot of changes here made by both sides. Now, which I'll get into for you straight away. We'll start off on this one with the Melbourne Storm. So they've obviously had a lot of players missing due to injuries and suspensions as well. So for the Storm, Kenny Bromwich will come into the side after being named fit to play and will be looking like coming off the bench, with Felice Kafusi obviously being successful in the judiciary. Now, Bromwich will take the spot of Kafusi in the starting side. Then Aromea will get the call up on the wing to take the spot of Josh Adokar. Cooper Johns will start at 5'8", with Nelson Osofa-Solomona starting at prop and Chris Lewis moving to the bench. And Riley Jack's back from concussion on the extended bench. Now, for the Titans, Ash Taylor returns from injury to partner Fogarty in the halves, with Tanner Boyd moving over to the extended bench. And Tyro Peachy will come back from suspension on the bench. Now, Preston Campbell's son, Jaden Campbell, will be making his debut at fullback. In 6 games, he's made about 65 tackle busts and scored about 4 or 5 tries. So he's one kid I'm really excited to see play. Joseph Vuna Now he'd be named on the bench. He hasn't played in a couple of years, so he get a spot on the bench. Jamin Jolliffe will replace Fodawaker at prop. Sam Stone will take the spot of Dave Fafita at number 12, and Sam McIntyre will start at lock for Tino Fasu and Malawi. And Jot Whitbread will join the bench with Aaron Clark and Vuna as well as Peachy, taking the spot of Bo Firma, who's injured his hamstring. I'm still going to go to the Storm. I still think they got that threat of Nico Hines and Brandon Smith playing exceptional football. I think they'll put it to the Titans and they'll beat them by at least 20. So Storm there by 20. In the last game, the Knights will be taking on the Eels. Suaso Sue will take the spot of Clemmer, who's been suspended for 2 weeks. And Jake Saifidi will take the spot of his brother Daniel, who's in State of Origin. Brody Jones has moved into the starting side. So Kurt Mann will be added to the bench alongside Nathaniel Sasagi, or as well as people know him as Simi Sasagi, and Jack Johns making his first appearance this week and for the first time this year. For the Eels, Dylan Brown and RCG return to the side. Oregon Kafusi will go back to the bench, and Jacob Arthur moving to the reserves. And Marata Niukore will take the spot of Junior Paula at prop. And Hayes Dunster will come in and take the spot of Blake Ferguson, who's been dropped, as we discussed earlier on the podcast. So Hayes Dunster will get his first start this year, which Ferguson will go play New South Wales Cup. And Will Smith will come back into the side after returning from broken thumb, in the number 14 jersey. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on another episode of League Chat with the Stat. Now, just remember, we can continue to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Now, as I said, we're almost near the launch of our merch. We should be dropping within the next week or so just be tuned for that. Look, with only 4 games being played this week, enjoy what is left. Get ready for State of Origin to start getting excited, and just be ready for a great Origin encounter, which I'm looking forward to in Townsville next week. But just enjoy these for the teams that aren't playing this week. Enjoy the bye. For those fans that have to sweat on whether the team will win and most likely lose, enjoy the bye. I know I will. Dogs getting the bye this week, which I'm really excited for. But yeah, just enjoy it. Enjoy the rest of round 13. And let's get ready for State of Origin. Have a good one, guys. Take it easy.